Hello and welcome to this edition of the Fifth Estate podcast, or I would rather call it a videocast. The topic today is the technical aspects of UID. I never use the word Aadhaar, although that's the popular delusion, because Aadhaar is the name of a private trust or the first chairperson of the UID AI. And I prefer not to use that word at all. Why promote a brand, a name for a government program, which is absolutely silly. Now, contrary to the boast of UID, which says we have set up the largest database of its kind in the world, UID, in my view, is a typical example of how not to launch a project. No project anywhere in the world is launched without a feasibility study or a detailed project report, DPR as it's called. The boast of UID reveals its ignorance. The United States of America, from which countries' firms UID's biometric technologies borrowed, have not implemented such a project, and for very sound reasons. In fact, there has all along been a false claim that India's UID project is same as the SSN in USA. That's not true. It's a complete lie. The United Kingdom, which against all sane advice commenced the implementation of a similar project called the National ID Act program, but no sooner a new government was formed in 2009, not only did the government scrap the project and the National ID Act, but destroyed all data of just 15,000 people whose data had been collected by then. It costed them £1.25 million. It's Bismarck, I think, who said, "Fools learn by experience, I learn by others' experience." We don't seem to learn by experience either. What class of fools would that be? Now, this is the difference between the developed world and the developing countries or underdeveloped world. There's a difference between knowledge and ignorance. We had the benefit, in fact, UID had the benefit of the experience of the United Kingdom and the studies in the United States of America. But there is a refusal to learn or pause and think in spite of insurmountable difficulties and problems. They say fools rush where angels fear to tread. UID has been a long, mindless leap into stupidity. What else can one say about such obstinate buffoonery? A pliant, a sycophantic, prostitute media, which is equally ignorant, bought into UID's propaganda, threats, or inducements. Let me read to you from an article in The Economist of UK, published on 1st October 2010. The article is titled "Babbage Biometrics, the Difference Engine," and appeared in the technology section of the magazine. It says, thanks to gangster movies, cop shows, and spy thrillers, people have come to think of fingerprints and biometric means of identifying evildoers as being completely foolproof. In reality, they are not and never have been, and few engineers who design such screening tools have ever claimed them to be so. Yet the myth has persisted among the public at large and officialdom in particular, and in the process it has led, especially since the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, to a great deal of public money being squandered and worse, to fostering a sense of security that is largely misplaced. I'd also like to read to you an article from Professor Ian Angel. It appeared in Times Online, I think somewhere in 8th June 2012 or so. It's titled "The ID cards, the ultimate ID theft. And in it he says, Ms. Smith is also yet another Home Secretary who subscribes to the Pixie Dust School of Technology. Pixie Dust School of Technology is computation is magic, a magic substance to be sprinkled over problems, and hey presto, they vanish. And this is what probably the UID and our government here today thinks. Little wonder, Professor Angel says, that Britain has an appalling record in government IT projects. Ours is no less. He adds, Ms. Smith is also yet another Home Secretary who subscribes to this thought. The ID project is one of the biggest computer systems envisaged, says Professor Angel, far more complex than the failing NHS system of the United Kingdom, and it's another disaster waiting to happen. In our case, the disaster is already happening. Professor Angel continues, still politicians naively claim there will be no problems. Don't ours do the same? He continues, it will be totally secure, says the politician, because of biometrics. Apparently, iris scans, fingerprints, face recognition software will all work perfectly, be amazingly cheap to implement, and all foolproof. It must be true, as they've been told that this is so by those selling the technology. Baroness Annelay of St. John's, with a group of parliamentarians, was once given a demonstration of facial recognition systems. It failed. Indeed, the system subsequently crashed twice. And the reason? The Baroness was told her face was too bland. Then Professor Angel adds, the only property that all systems have in common is that they fail. And bigger the system, he talks of the United Kingdom, which had 60 million entries on a compulsory ID card database. We are trying the same, making it compulsory in spite of Supreme Court's orders to the contrary. Professor Angel says the greater the opportunity of failure, the larger the system is. Systems are much like life forms. They degrade over the time, the entropy. In the case of databases, they pick up errors and build data error upon error. We have all had encounters with computer systems that get it wrong. Barclays once refused one of my transactions because they said it was accessing an account owned by a teenage girl named Ian Angel, who lived at my address and was a professor at LSE. I still had to take the morning off work to explain that a 14-year-old girl couldn't own an account that, according to their own records, had been open for 35 years. There you are. Professor Angel makes some other points, and he says, and however scrupulous the managers might be, errors leak and take on a life of their own. They are sampled by other databases. In UID, they call it seeding and linking it to every database in the country. Let me continue as I intersperse his sayings with my own comments. And he says, this is known as farming errors. Even when corrected in the original database, they live on elsewhere. Let me add, in our case, when the UID is linked to, say, the PDS, the MNREGA and to bank accounts, errors in the MNREGA might get transferred to the bank accounts and to the PDS system. If it's corrected, say, in the PDS system, they continue to live in the MNREGS as well as in the bank accounts. It's impossible to correct every database which has been made incorrect. Let me continue with Professor Angel's description. But the ID project will be different, we are told. According to the rhetoric, an ID card, one central point of reference, will be so much more efficient and beneficial than you having to prove your identity daily by producing driving licenses, gas bills, and so on. Its proponents fail to see that if any of these documents is erroneous, then we don't use the one with, say, a mistake in the address to prove our identity. With the ID card, we won't have a choice. Even if the card is not compulsory, all financial systems will converge on it. So let me add that even if our Supreme Court says this is not mandatory and it is voluntary, and if a lot of foolish people in our country rush to enroll thinking that they'll lose some benefit or other, a paltry 300 rupees of subsidy, which in any case now people earning over 10 lakhs are not eligible for, you still have a problem, because even the so-called voluntary database linked together all over the place will have a lot of problems, and all financial systems will converge on it. And anyone without a card, in our case the Aadhaar card as they say, faces great cost and inconvenience. Just like Oyster cards on the London Underground, you are not forced, but it's much more expensive and tiresome without one. However, the ID card itself isn't the real problem. In our case, we don't even have an ID card. The UID very cleverly said, you take the acknowledgement, laminate it, and use it as a card. And there goes their biometrics. In fact, they had at one stage given an order for printing of ID cards, but later cancelled the order. So as Professor Angel says, the ID card itself isn't the real problem. It's the ID register. There, each entry will eventually take on a legal status, even if this bill is struck down in our country. In time, all other proofs of identity will refer back to the one entry. If the register is wrong, and remember, fallible human hands will at some stage have to handle your personal information, then all other databases will be wrong too. Given the propensity of officialdom to trust the details on their computer screen rather than the person in front of them, you will have to confirm your entry in the register or become a non-person. In fact, by UID's own admission, rather they very foolishly claimed in their counter affidavit to my writ petition in the Supreme Court that 80 million enrollment packages, and that's an interesting phrase for people who enrolled, 80 million enrollment packages were detected as being false or duplicate entries. In fact, their very claim shows that they are unable to distinguish between what's a false enrollment and what's a duplicate entry. In any case, 80 million people, and when the enrollment was done, about 800 people had been enrolled, that is 1 in 10 persons were declared as duplicates and just deleted from the database. So 80 million people, that is about the size of the state of Bihar, were declared non-persons. The reasons for this foolishness are three. One is biometric recognition, and the other is the challenges it poses. And the National Academies of the USA have come out with a paper which has very startling findings. And that topic about the US research consisting of about 4 organizations of the highest reputation in the United States have come to the conclusion that biometrics are fallible, they are problematic, and cannot be used for the kind of uses we are planning to do. On that I will talk in the next edition of the Fifth Estate. Thank you for watching and listening, and come again. God bless.